You know that feeling when a friend asks, should I drop a few thousand on a new mirrorless just because I'm finally getting serious about my side hustle photography? I've been there, scrolling through specs sheets, watching endless demo reels, and wondering if the hype is worth the cash. The thing that kept me from diving in blind was the fear of buying a pro-level body that ends up collecting dust because it's either too clunky for everyday shooting or just not delivering the promised performance when the lights go low. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Panasonic LUMIX S1RII lands in that sweet spot where full-frame ambition meets a workflow that tries to be both fast and flexible. It's not a budget entry, but it also isn't a niche cinema camera you can only justify in a studio. The 24.1 megapixel backside illuminated sensor is where the story starts. The extra light gathering efficiency translates into more detail in shadows without the noise you normally see when you push ISO in a dimly lit venue. I tested it on a downtown jazz gig where the stage lighting was a mix of warm gels and harsh spotlights. The images kept the texture of the saxophone's brass and the grain of the audience's clothing, and the video clips held a clean look even when I cranked the ISO to 6400. That kind of low-light confidence is what separates a nice camera from a camera that actually works when you need it. Autofocus is where the S1RII really earns its stripes for creators who move fast. The high-speed AFC burst can shoot up to 30 frames per second, and the subject tracking stays locked even when you're panning across a sports field or a moving parade. I set it up on a friend's bike race and, while I was jogging alongside the riders, the camera kept the cyclists sharp from start to finish, despite the rapid changes in distance and direction. For anyone who does wildlife or action work, that reliability cuts down on missed shots and the endless post-shoot culling. On the flip side, the AF system does have a learning curve. The focus point selection isn't as intuitive as a few newer rivals, and you'll spend a few minutes in the menus figuring out the best mode for your subject. If you're used to point-and-shoot simplicity, you might find the initial setup a little daunting. Stabilization is another practical piece of the puzzle. The S1RII offers a 5-axis in-body system that works well for handheld video, which means you can walk through a wedding ceremony with just the camera and a decent lens and still get smooth footage without a gimbal. I tried shooting a ceremony's first look moment while walking slowly, and the result was a steady, cinematic clip that didn't feel jittery. However, the stabilization isn't a miracle worker for long telephoto work. At 200mm and beyond you'll still notice some wobble if you're not using a tripod or a dedicated rig. So if you're planning a lot of wildlife or sports shots from a distance, you'll want to factor in additional stabilization gear. The lens ecosystem for Panasonic's full-frame line is still growing, but you're not left stranded. The mount mounts give you access to a solid line of native lenses, and through adapters you can pull in high-quality Leica and Sigma glass. In practice, that means you can start with a versatile 2470mm kit lens for most day-to-day shooting, then add a fast 50mm prime for portraits or a wide-angle 1424mm for landscape without breaking the bank. The downside is that native lenses tend to be pricier than their Micro Four Thirds counterparts, and the selection isn't as deep as Sony's E-mount yet. If you already own Panasonic or Leica lenses, the transition is smooth. If you're building from scratch, expect to spend a bit more to fill out your kit. Battery life on the S1RII is respectable for a full-frame body, especially when you factor in both stills and video usage. In my tests, a single charge got me through roughly 350 still frames in a mixed lighting shoot, and about an hour of continuous 4K video before the indicator turned amber. That's enough for a typical day out, but if you're planning all-day events or long documentary shoots, swapping batteries on the fly is still advisable. The camera's grip and button layout feel solid, and the menu system, while packed with options, follows a logical hierarchy once you get past the initial welcome tour. Newcomers might feel overwhelmed by the depth of customization, but that same depth becomes a powerful tool for seasoned creators who want to tailor the camera to their exact workflow. So, who should actually consider the LUMIX S1RII? If you're a professional or serious hobbyist who needs a high-resolution sensor, dependable low-light performance, and a fast burst for action, this camera ticks the boxes. It shines in weddings, portrait sessions, street photography where the light changes quickly, and even in indie video projects where you want that cinematic feel without lugging a full cinema rig. It also makes sense for existing Panasonic users who want to stay within.